Okay, and we are testing. Merging these up a little bit more. And we'll see how that works. All right, and there we are. Hopefully, y'all, there we go. There are our stats. That means we are live. The light is red. The night is young. The wind is howling outside, but we are staying chill inside. Welcome to Night Rides. I am your host, Jax Wolff, and you have dropped in on our Friday night writing stream. If you were new to the session, Night Rides is pretty simple. All you have to do is sit back and relax. We have an open chat, which is a place where you can hang out and bond with your fellow writers. Feel free to say whatever you'd like, whatever you'd like. So long as it doesn't violate YouTube TOS, you know how it is. As always, the way this works is you type things in chat and I will read them aloud and respond to them. Or you can chat with each other, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter, but how you do it doesn't matter. This is all just one big happy bonding session with writers on Discord, Bsky, wherever else you might have found us. As always, there's an icebreaker of the night. The icebreaker is a question that is meant to get your creative juices flowing and coax those of you who are a little bit shy out into the chat. Tonight's icebreaker is thankfully a little bit less esoteric than last night's. I am so sorry for last night's. But tonight's is pretty simple. What are your OC's favorite genres of music? Which quiet little mouse is secretly a metalhead? Which one is a classical nerd? Which one is secretly obsessed with anime openings? Feel free to drop your answers in chat. And speaking of, hello Oakleaf. Oakleaf says, hi, dropping in for a few before dinner. That is totally fair. What's on the menu tonight? Like, hopefully it's something awesome. It's Friday night, you need to enjoy that time, you know what I mean? But yes, how are you? And how are you doing? And it's been a while since I do believe since we've last seen you in chat, so welcome back also. Other than that, we're all kind of coming in, so hello to anybody else who has come in. I do see that viewer count go up a little bit. Oakleaf says chicken stew and rice leftovers. Oh, that sounds amazing. I did mention that the wind is howling out there. It's the temperature is still kind of stubbornly hovering around the 60s, 70s mark which is weird for a New York autumn. But This chicken stew sounds like it would be an amazing little dish for a night like this for sure. And it does sound hearty. I hope you enjoy it even in leftover form. Oakleaf says, I am managing, and also asks how I am. First off, understandable. This has been a week of managing for everyone, but I am glad to see that people are for sure managing, you know. It's been rough, but it'll get better little by little. It might not feel like it's getting that much better in the near future, but it will get better. But as for me, I am also managing. I am doing far better than I was at the beginning of the week. Good news has come yesterday, in fact. New opportunities have opened up, and things might be looking up. Fingers crossed anyway. We'll see how opportunities pan out, but overall, you know, life goes on, and things, you keep on holding on, and the more you hold on, the more good things come, you know? Like, you keep on holding on, and eventually the things that you're waiting for do happen. That sounded more inspirational in my head, but you get the idea. Like, you know, you just kind of work hard and hang on, and eventually it pays off, and it feels good that it'll pay off, or at least there's a promise of paying off. I keep on jumping the gun when it's just an opportunity right now, but like, it's an open door, but it's not an open door if I've stepped through yet, if that makes sense. Like, I hate to be super cryptic, but I'm also very superstitious about these kinds of things. Like, the moment you speak it into existence and share it with other people, the moment that the door slams shut on you, in my weird kind of luck sense. But it's like, given what's gone on for months and months, it's like you cling to any sort of ray of hope in the form of any sort of good news, even if it's the promise of good news, you know? And I hope that moment comes for everybody, basically. And I encourage you to just sort of hang on if you don't feel like you're there. Hello, Companion Wolf. Welcome. And hello also to John the Crazed Skull. John the Crazed Skull says, I just popped by to say hi. I currently don't have access to my PC right now due to a mold problem. Yikes. Be careful for sure. Totally understandable. Go run off and take care of that mold problem. Alternatively, if you are stuck outside because of mold problem, I hope things get resolved soon. Like, I hope that that mold can be cleaned up, and I hope whatever caused it can be fixed, and that you can go back to your regular life. But in the meantime, I am so sorry to hear that your night has started off very interestingly. Oakleaf says that makes sense, being skeptical of luck, but hope and progress is important however it turns out. Amen there. So, fingers crossed, and also reiterating, stay strong, my dudes. The good times will come to you eventually. But yeah. So... pause for a little bit, give my mouth a little bit of a rest while we wait for more folks to drop in. Also, yeah, John, definitely keep us updated on that mold problem there. Oh shit, I never did actually pay attention to the icebreaker. Snap. Icebreaker. Ooh, good question. In universe, he's probably. Oakleaf says, Icebreaker. Oh, good question. In universe, he's probably never heard any music other than people singing in a tavern or work song type music. Dunno what modern genre he'd be into. I have to say, like, damn, I feel for this dude. Like, never getting exposed to anything except for work songs and whatnot. That says a lot about, you know, how much, just in general, his world and his place in it, when you only get to hear the background music, like, the background music that colors work, essentially. Because singing at tavern, that's like, you're either there as a patron or you're there as a worker, and God help you, you know, if you're the latter. And work song type music, that's like flat out, oh no. Oakleaf says he's had a rough life. Yeah. I kind of feel like it's a bleak one, and I feel for him, I really do. Oakley says, I love that you understood that even from the music, Heart. Yeah, and I mean, in my opinion, like, the reason why I'm kind of, like, obsessed with music myself, even though I'm not a musician, is that it's a form of joy. Like, when you have music, you have joy, essentially. Somebody is coloring their world through auditory art. And even if it's like a sad song, it adds like a spark, you know? Like church hymns are full of joy usually, and romantic songs, they're full of love. Work songs are like, even work songs are a little bit full of hope, but, you know, they're being sung because you're kind of oppressed in a way. You're being worked to death, and you're kind of like passing the time by clinging on to a shred of hope. So it's sort of like, if that's all you hear, that type, the work song type, then it's like, oh no. But if you have other types like hymns or love songs or songs meant to entertain that you hear outside of a setting that isn't crowded and full of drunk people, then there's joy in your life. So yeah, 100% you can tell what kind of background a character has from the music that they listen to. I should probably answer this myself, considering the fact that I write about music. Oh, here we have another response. It's John the Crazy Skull. I'm getting anti-mold paint, but to answer the question, oh, okay, that is really nifty. I've heard of that, but damn. I hope that it's like you're preventing the mold, not like it's there and you are desperately trying to get rid of it. Although you did mention that was like a mold problem. So, yikes. But at the very least, there's like steps that you can take to prevent further mold. The rest of John's answer says, I feel like most of the main characters would like Sabaton of Monsters and Men and or Wardruna. Magnus kind of likes Mongolian style. Is that like Mongolian throat music or like Mongolian, the actual Mongolian culture music? Because either way, that is really cool. Like, you have bunches of rock bands and then culture world music. That's like a good variety in terms of cast, but also epic. Oakleaf says, have you heard the linguistics theory that human speech began as rhythmic chant song to communicate and coordinate communication activities, and this still shows in sea shanties and walking songs. So music really is joy, but I think it's also humanity. I haven't heard that theory specifically, but I can completely understand. I feel like that it's a solid one, because like a lot of the earliest fragments of written culture were oral stories, and oral stories were always set to music. That's how you can remember huge ass epics, and how you can present that without actually having a written record of the Odyssey or something like that. It was song. But I can also kind of understand that because, like, the easiest way to translate, animals do sing. They do have a cadence or beat translates into cadence, so therefore, it's kind of like a transition. But I like the idea that it was specifically to communicate and coordinate activities, because you're right in saying that it's also humanity. Because then it would mean, like, music was community, essentially. You were coordinating through music. So therefore, if you were coordinating through music, you were coordinating a community, and therefore community is humanity. So it's sort of like, it's a very beautiful concept right there. And let's see. Also seconding what Oakleaf says about Wardruna, John the Grey Skull says, throat singing, his culture is kind of inspired by Mongolian and Nordic culture with a hint of Taoism. Ooh. I can see that, yeah. It's also extremely metal. Like, just that combination of different aesthetics right there. Also, I am jiving with the fact that there are people now talking about metal bands in chat. If you're listening to this recording after the stream ends, please eventually consider joining us properly, because we have fun, like, discussing metal bands and community and all kinds of other fun stuff in chat. So hopefully, I don't know, hopefully the chat playback will work. Sometimes it doesn't, I've noticed. So in any case, love what's going on, love metal music, love you guys' choices for songs. Oakleaf, once again, yours is heartbreaking. John's, yours is so fucking metal, and I'm adoring it. I need to listen to more Mongolian throat music, though, because that's rad as hell. Excuse me. Oakleaf says, I'm both a music nerd and a linguistics nerd. This is very much my special interest wheelhouse. Hells yes, bro fist right there. Like, I personally haven't taken linguistics courses or music courses or anything like that, but it's sort of like just special interest. So I'm right there with you. Though Pause on the Keyboard says, I haven't thought about music taste from my OCs much, so no answer from me tonight. That is totally okay, but get thee to Spotify. I will drag you there, and we will come up with OC character playlist eventually. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't want to do, but it is fun. It's kind of like making playlists on Spotify of your works in progress, your characters, what they'd like, that whole 9 yards. It's like auditory Pinterest. You know how some people are like, yeah, I have entire Pinterest pin boards or whatever you call them, just for my characters and their aesthetics. It's that. So please do. Companion Wolf says, no, we should do it sometime. It sounds like fun. It is. And Spotify makes it so easy. Like, I never thought it would be easy to migrate outside of my usual lists until I just started combing through recommended lists. So that's one way to, like, if you type in a genre that you like or a genre that you think would vibe with your characters, Spotify will produce their own playlists. All you have to do is like comb through, listen to a few seconds, look at the lyrics if they have that synced up, and choose the ones that kind of sound kind of cool. You can spend hours doing that though, so it is a rabbit hole a little bit, but it's a fun one, and it's not as intimidating as it might sound at first. Highly recommend. Companion Wolf says, I like doing playlists for the stories and the OCs. I like doing playlists for the stories and the OCs from This Is About Them way. Yeah, absolutely. So it's really just kind of like a jump from, you take like the philosophies that you use to do, or the philosophies and methods that you do for that, and translate it to like getting into their mindset. And absolutely, like, I have an entire it's actually a YouTube playlist, not a Spotify playlist, but because it's easier to find fiddlers on Spotify for some reason, and it's literally just fiddling songs, and it's because, you know, that's mixed playlist right there. I guess this transitions into my own answer, which is basically Mick listens to a lot of fiddle music because he is himself a fiddler, so he's always trying to pick up new techniques and new genres, new styles by listening to the bards that might breeze on through Southwind, or just sort of like experimenting himself. His family style, which is how he learned, was more Celtic. The Marins are kind of like based on, their backstory is kind of more Irish and Scottish. So the music that he received from the music book that he learned from, essentially, that was passed down to him from his ancestors, was Irish music. But because Southwind is essentially not too far from a port city, Silverport, you would get adventurers from all over the world. So people with different styles would breeze through. So he would kind of get taken with different genres, but it's still kind of fiddle music. So like he might pick up a couple of French tunes. A lot of his music nowadays is more Appalachian, because a lot of the adventures that he'd cater to came from the American style continent somewhere else. So he plays essentially a mix of Irish American music, and it is chaotic, but 100% like, it's fun, and it's fun to like do more research into that, because like there are so many smaller YouTube creators out there who do a lot of both styles. A ton of people like sitting in the woods playing fiddles, which is absolutely amazing, and a ton of other people who are like sitting on the shores of lakes playing Irish music, and it's like so much fun to bounce back and forth between those. Eleanor, meanwhile, her favorite music has always been the stuff that she kind of picks up from taverns. She was exposed to a lot more than that, especially since she grew up like in the aristocracy. So she was like exposed to classical music. She was exposed to all these famous composers, and she also was exposed to church music because her family is religious. But ultimately, her favorites are just like drinking songs and sea shanties that the adventurers would bring in and use as drinking songs, because that's where she'd have the most fun. She'd go into taverns, she'd go into the Red Rooster when it had been during the hours when it would be more of a bar than a bistro, and she would get drunk and sing along to these drinking songs. So there's a little bit of overlap, and of course, on top of everything else, I'm obligated to say it, but it's not an obligation from her. But her second favorite music is mixed music, so it's sort of like drinking music, but also Irish American fiddle. Oakleaf says, in this house we love a good fiddle boy, good taste in music. He does have great taste in music, but also thank you. It is currently 8:30. We've said hello to pretty much everybody who's popped up in chat, but if you're in chat and kind of lurking, pop in and say hi and answer the icebreaker. But otherwise, I think it might be time to set up our first sprint. I think everybody here has done a sprint, but just to cover my bases, if you're kind of like lurking, you have this playing from Blue Sky and you haven't actually jumped into YouTube or whatnot. A sprint is basically, I set a timer for a amount of time. The tradition is 20 minutes. And during those 20 minutes, all you do is write or edit, at the end of which timer will beep and you get to explain how many words you wrote or how many words you edited. In my book, editing counts, and you count how many words you read. So if you start at the beginning of one paragraph and go for 4 paragraphs, you count all the words in those 4 paragraphs, even if you didn't actually touch them. So that's how you count editing for exercises like this. Or if you want to be like super strict and only want to count the ones that you've actually edited, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. But basically, you share your work counts, we cheer you on, rest for 15 minutes and chat amongst ourselves, then set the timer and go at it again. And we are doing that 3 times tonight. So that having been said, we do have our first timer up for the first 20 minutes. We'll start at 8:35. So before we get started, what are you guys working on tonight? For me, as always, it's going to be the nameless song. I'm currently on chapter 14, scene 1. Chapter 14 is supposed to be a little bit meaty, and it's been kind of rough getting back into it, but we'll see how we go. But let me know, talk about your projects as well. Minion Wolf says, I'm collecting patterns to try to make patterns for friendship bracelets. Too EP to write. Totally understandable. It is night, so night after a very long week. So I can understand being too EP, but that is really cool. You're doing research on patterns. Those things can be super colorful. So I hope you post pictures of whatever ones you do, because those, no doubt it'll be super pretty. Companion Wolf says, trying to find stuff that's for beginners, and yes, I will. Excellent. Oakley says, Transboy and definitely not off-brand Rivendell, about to have an important conversation if I have the brain power for it. I hope so. But you know, take it at an even pace across these 3 sprints, and if it happens, it happens. If not, you know, poking at words means that you at least lay the foundations for whenever you do have the brain power for it. It is currently 8:35, which means that we are set to start our very first sprint. So if you are pulling up docks, get on those docks. And I wish you the best of luck on the first sprint. If you are riding, if you're not, totally a-okay, just chill out. Good luck with finding more patterns. But with that said, ready, get set, and go. But also misread thought that said Riverdale, which not the same. LOL. Yeah. Don't feel embarrassed. I kind of read it that way too. I am so sorry, Oakley. But anyway, yeah. Good luck, guys. Alright, and that is the first sprint of 3. Admittedly, I did not get too much done. Distraction, but also this is a bad part for me, so only 157 words in my corner. But how about you guys? How much were you able to get done? Oakleaf says, no words yet, but I did get dinner and a cat making biscuits next. Aww, your cat is contributing to the meal. Daniel Wolff says, I have found 2+ patterns I like. Both are baseball related. LOL. Totally a-okay. It is solid that you have your hyperfixation, so for sure, that's really cool. It's also kind of cool that there are themed friendship bracelets for baseball, so that's really fun, for sure. So yeah, we are just under 14 minutes into our 15-minute break. We'll take a 15-minute break for now, and just to get up, stretch, get water if you need to, shake out those hands, shake out those legs, whatever you need to do, and we'll get back into our next one fairly soon. Manuel says, ooh, I just found a cute one, a Flareon. Oh, that's really cool. Where are you looking for your patterns, by the way? I'm curious, like, is there a website for them, or are you looking on DeviantArt or some other artsy site? Feel free to post in chat. Other than that, let's see. But yeah, right now, just to rubber duck off y'all, right now I'm in the middle of building up to a scene that's supposed to introduce technically the secondary antagonist for the Nameless Song. So if you have or haven't followed anything about the story, you probably... I don't talk as much about the exact story on Blue Sky as I had on Tumblr, so I'm just going to briefly go through, like, the backstory of the issue at hand. But basically, the story as you know it is about Mick goes off on an adventure with Eleanor because Eleanor had just graduated from college, and it's always been her dream to go out and see the world as an adventurer before she has to submit to her duties as a member of the aristocracy, which is basically get married and have children. Mick, his entire thing is understanding that Eleanor doesn't want that life for herself, but also he wants to make sure that she stays alive. So of course he says yes to both of these things because he's in love with her secretly. So he goes off on an adventure, and somewhere along the line, he and Eleanor take a shady job because adventurers in this world are freelance monster hunters. You hire them to go out into the monster fields because there are monster infestations all over this world, and not everybody can go out there and kill monsters. So you hire seasoned adventurers to do it for you and rely on the city watch of your towns to keep you protected, and so on and so forth, blah blah blah. But normally adventurers, they take jobs through the Adventurer Guild, but Mick and Eleanor decide to take a job that some random person offers. And the problem with this is that it's not vetted, which means that it stands at a higher risk of being an actual dangerous job. Turns out, yeah, it was actually dangerous, and it led to a series of events that put Mick in the path of a magical amulet that turns into a dragon. You don't need to know the part about the adventure stuff. I'm just like chatting because like it's me just filling up time. But basically, most of the story is about him getting turned into a dragon and then him trying to figure out how to dragon, especially leading up to the confrontation with his destiny, which is basically to lead the army of dragons against the gods in a series of challenges, because the gods are at war with the dragons. They have been at war for eons and eons, but 400 years ago the dragons went underground because they had lost their very last leader, which is basically a person who is turned into a dragon. That is called their shepherd. And once upon a time, there were artifacts just like the one that Mick found that turned random people into dragons, and then that random person went off and led the dragons into war. But the last one happened 400 years ago, except now Mick has uncovered the very last artifact and is therefore the very last shepherd, and now he has to struggle with the idea that, you know, he's going into war against the gods. How do you avoid going into war against the gods? So there's that conflict, and it's really building up to him, or the entire story is building up to him coming to terms with the fact that he can't avoid that conflict. One way or another, he's not turning back into a dragon until he faces that conflict and embraces whatever he's supposed to be as the dragon shepherd. But there are antagonists. Each of the gods have a champion. So basically he's kind of like the champion of the dragon's god, called the dead god. The dead god basically being the adversary of the gods, essentially not exactly the world's Satan, but basically the world's Satan, who was murdered eons and eons ago by the 12 main gods, and therefore his spirit comes back and assists any of the dragon shepherds. Currently that would be Mick. So Mick is the dragon's champion, but there are 12 champions of the actual other gods who had murdered the dragon's gods. In order to fight this war, Mick has to go through the challenges issued by each of these champions, defeat the champion, and then defeat the god that they're attached to. If he defeats the god that they're attached to, then they give him a boon, and he's supposed to collect all 11 boons up to Elda, the High Queen, the Queen of the Gods, and also the patron deity of the Queen of Eldana, the kingdom, meaning that the Queen of the kingdom is also the champion of the highest god. So, going back to the Nameless Song, technically there are 2 antagonists. 3 if you count the dead god, but he's not as much of an antagonist. 4 if you count Mixed Destiny, I guess. It's kind of a mess. But there's also one main antagonist throughout the entire series. Not like the chief final boss, which is Elda and her champion. There's also Lord from Southwind, from Mick and Eleanor's hometown, who is also in love with Eleanor, and who's a pompous piece of shit. His name is Lord Albert. He is a highborn elf, the son of a merchant, and the second wealthiest family in Southwind next to Eleanor's. So he feels kind of entitled to Eleanor's attention, but Eleanor kind of like hates him because, number one, he's a pompous asshole, and number 2, he's also extremely ableist and classist. And her best friend and Eleanor's best friend is a disabled commoner. So basically, Lord Albert, as you find out later on in the book, and I don't mind offering spoilers, but if you do mind spoilers, please tune out right now. Lord Albert becomes a champion for one of the gods, and he throws around his power, so he becomes one of the main antagonists of the book, not only because, like, he pops up here and there, essentially to try to get Eleanor to join his party, because he does have a party of adventurers around him. And also, obviously, he's totally better than some disabled commoner. You know, he can offer so much. Why is she traveling with a disabled commoner through monster-infested wilds? So, for every chapter before this arc that we're working on right now, he is essentially the antagonist in the sense that he is constantly shitting on Nick one way or another, and also really pissing off Eleanor every chance he gets, even though he doesn't understand that he's pissing off Eleanor. Then after this arc, he's also the antagonist because he knows that Mick is the shepherd, and therefore he is actively trying to kill Mick. So that's one antagonist. The other one is this one that I'm trying to introduce right now, who is the Lord Commander, or like the leader of the military force of the kingdom. So there's a military force called the Order of the Dawnlit Gods. Dawnlit Gods being the 12 main gods of this pantheon. So the Order of the Dawnlit Gods is basically the Queen's personal army. They go out and they conduct official military business for the Queen. So if they appear, shit has gone down. And their leader is another character from Eleanor's past, whose name is Lord Ismael. Lord Ismael is also the nephew of the Queen, but he's also, unbeknownst to her right now, the champion of Phelan, who is one of the 12 gods, like the first god that Mick and Eleanor meet. So the book's climax happens during Phelan's trial. So Ismael is the one who is supposed to face off against Mick. And he's not introduced until chapter 14, which is about 9 chapters away from the ending. So it's super fucking awkward, and it's like, no matter how much I try to reshape this, it's going to be awkward, and I don't know how to introduce him better than this. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to plug on through and try to drum up Ismael's character here, at least, so that throughout the rest of the book he can just sort of be an ever-present force. But I'm also aware that eventually I'm going to have to go back into earlier chapters and try to thread in, oh yeah, Eleanor had exes, by the way, and one of her exes was a highborn, the Queen's nephew. But that's why I'm kind of like, why it's so hard for me to get into this, because it's his introduction scene, and also it's like scene description, which is never my forte anyway, despite the fact I'm a world builder. But that's basically what's going on right now, why I keep on hesitating, why I haven't made too much progress. In the chat, Companion Wolf says dead god equals deuteragonist, both protag and antagonist to degree, unless I'm getting that word wrong. Deuteragonist means the second most important character in the book. So, like, imagine deuteragonist means, in a way, second protagonist. So, Mick and Eleanor are deuteragonists to each other. So, that's another way of thinking of it. Somebody who's both protag and antag. I don't think there's really a specific word for it. It really depends on how you approach it. Foil is one possible word. Anti-hero is another possible word. I don't think either of those are the dead god. I think he might be an anti-hero, essentially, especially in later books, because he's going to have to end this thought in just a few more words. But basically, in later books, he does eventually team up with Mick and help him along as a supporting force. But in this book, the dead god isn't actively trying to hinder Mick. He just straight up doesn't want to help him, because in the dead god's mind, he's supposed to be basically defeated. He has gone through so many other champions, and fate essentially has brought him, like literally fate, because fun story about Mick and a minor rooster god of serendipity, which I will totally hash out if people want to know and ask about it in chat. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, nudge. But anyway, the point is, fate literally gave the dead god one last hope, and that last hope is not hero material at all. He's not meek exactly, but Mick believes that, he's not actually made for anything. He's just made to help Eleanor along, and then he's destined to have a mediocre existence as a waiter for his family for the rest of his life, once he sees Eleanor off to do whatever it is that she wants to do. But so the dead god understands that, and he's like, well, you're going to die. I know you're going to die, because I have had champions who are far more qualified than you, and they have died. So you're not bringing anything to the table. It'll be more merciful if I don't actually accept you and help you along and just let you die. So it takes until Mick starts to be more assertive and essentially stands up for himself and says, you know what? Fuck you then. I'm going to make my own destiny. I'm going to do things my own way. And he finally defeats champions in his own way. And finally the dead god's like, oh, well, you've shown your worth. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll help you. But until then, the dead god spends most of the book being like, there's no point, I'm just here. I'm going to tell you what you keep on asking me, but, I'm just going to warn you, hey, you're going to die. Sorry. Bye. But, yeah, so, in a way, they do have an antagonistic relationship, Mick and the dead god, until following books. But it's kind of like a loose sort of thing. But anyway, I have gotten requests to explain the rooster god. So fun. This is actually brought up as the prologue to the Nameless song, but it's ever present, although not overtly. 400 years ago, right around the time that the dragons had gone underground, the Martin family had been essentially foot soldiers in a military in Eldana. It's never in a military in the capital of Eldiven. In other words, they were powerful earth mages who were in Eldiven. It's never actually brought up in the book who they were working for, but and I think it is lost to Martin family history who they were working for. But I plan on revealing it in later books that it was definitely the order. The Martins had been high-ranking soldiers in the Order of the Dawnlit Gods. They had been very close to royalty, but they weren't themselves royalty. But right around the time that the Dragon Wars ended and the last dragons had gone underground, the last shepherd had been killed, the Martins decided to leave Eldiven and follow a bunch of refugees from another kingdom southward to farmland. Those refugees, by the way, were Eleanor's family and a bunch of other foreigners who eventually founded the town of Southwind and the county of Southwind as well. But the Martins had come along a couple years after they had settled the town. But also, you don't really know this right off the bat either, but the timeline does line up and there's a reason for that, for why the Martins left Eldiven and why the last shepherd died and stuff like that. It's a complicated story. I'm not going to give out spoilers. That is an entirely different thing. But just know that they left Eldiven, wanted peace and quiet, went to Southwind. And they had intended on becoming chicken farmers because Southwind was a farming town. So everybody had a farm. But the problem was that the Martins were soldiers. So they didn't know how to actually do farming. They were soldiers from the largest city in the kingdom. So what did they have to do with farming? So essentially, their first winter there, the Martin family nearly died. Starving and desperate, and knowing that his family was starving and desperate as well, the patriarch of the Martin family, Josiah Martin, had taken his rooster familiar, Chanticleer, out into the wilds surrounding Southwind, and he performed a ritual that was supposed to ascend him to godhood. It was a forbidden ritual because it involves walking down the Sunless Road, which is that world's land of the dead. It's essentially the last road that you walk down as a spirit before you enter the luminous ocean and essentially have the magical energy within your soul broken down into its base parts and recycled into the universe. If you enter as a living person, however, then you absorb then the idea is that you get to the end and you could potentially absorb some of that ocean and become a god. Right? Or at least that's how the rumor went. I'm not going to tell you whether or not it's true because that's plot relevant. All you need to know is that Josiah Martin failed this ritual hard. Got to the end of the road and found something else at the end of the road, like an entity, another god. So I guess I am telling you a little bit. At the end of the road, there's a god, and nobody knows what that god is, because nobody remembers. If they fail at the ritual, let me back up. So, if you fail at the ritual, terrible things happen to you. If you succeed at the ritual, you are sworn to secrecy. So only gods know what's at the end of the Sunless Road, and they will never tell anybody what it is because it's a terrible secret who that god is. But Josiah Martin had met that god, and that god took pity on Josiah Martin and also saw his potential, kind of. That's the part I cannot tell you. 100% cannot tell you. So instead, usually what would happen is if you fail the ritual, then you're cursed to the point where, you're basically cursed to the point where there's no point in you going back, so you probably die on your way back. But instead, the god takes pity on Josiah and strips him of his magic, curses his family, and says, all of your sons will never be able to walk the Sunless Road. All of your sons will lose their magic, which is why every Martin male is born with mixed disability, which is essentially they have a taste of magic when they're young, but then their magic fades to the point where they're unable to use it. It's called void welling. So Mick has basically never been able to use magic without playing music, essentially. So she sends him back with that curse as the first dude who can't use magic, and as the progenitor of a long line of men who just void well. Martin women are fine, but they tend to uphold the tradition of, oh, we're not going to do this because we're not going to anger the gods by walking the sunless road again, because what will happen to the rest of our family? Try that again. Family is super important to the Martin clan. But in the process of all of that happening, Josiah Martin leaves behind his rooster familiar, Chanticleer. And the god, for some reason, is incredibly amused by Chanticleer. And the god sees a different future for Chanticleer. So the god makes the rooster the god of serendipity and sends that rooster back out into the world. And essentially, the rooster's power is essentially to grant luck to his followers and to change the fate of his followers, or anybody who doesn't expect it. So the lore around Southwind is that there's a rooster that's immortal running around. If you give it offerings, it will bless you with luck. To the Martins, it's like, that's our ancestors' familiar. We're going to feed it, but we're not going to say whether or not it's a real thing, because the intrigue about whether or not it's a real thing drives up business. But we definitely don't actually believe that this rooster will grant us luck, because he hasn't ever. Jokes on them. Chanticleer actually visits the Martins quite frequently. But basically, the god says that there's a game that's being played among the other gods. And just as a lark, this god says, Chanticleer, I want you to choose an heir. And what that means is Chanticleer, all people are born under the blessing of a different god. Usually that means one of the 12 Dawnlit gods. But the Martins, unbeknownst to them, because they are followers of Ordinary, the god of earth magic and of the harvest, they're actually watched over by Chanticleer. And Chanticleer had followed this mysterious god's word and chose Mick specifically. So Mick is actually the chosen of two gods, not one. He is the chosen of the dead god, but he's also blessed by the auspices of the god of serendipity, and that's why he ends up basically popping up for the dead god as one last stroke of luck, but also why he succeeds where the other shepherds don't. Because of this fucking rooster. Oakley says, I love luck, rooster god. This is great. Also, have you read a book called The Dun Cow? The name Chanticleer always makes me think of that book. I have not, actually. I kind of pulled Chanticleer out of folklore, but I am definitely looking this up now. Oh, okay. I have to admit, I've never actually heard of this book, and I don't know how. But I will have to add that to my to-read list, because I do love bangers, mid-century fantasy bangers. So, for sure. Daniel says, love that luck rooster. I love Chanticleer. He's probably, I have to admit, Chanticleer is probably my favorite character. And it's just, I don't want to say it's Chanticleer is a no thoughts head empty bird, because obviously there's some kind of intelligence, but you wouldn't think it because it's a rooster. There's a rooster running around and throwing fate itself. Oakleaf says the Book of the Dung Cow is a deeply weird book, but also great. I mean, I'm kind of looking at the Wikipedia plot summary, like skimming it, because to avoid too many spoilers, even though I love spoilers, but also it's Jesus Christ, it's very long. The plot summary, but like just skimming through, I'm seeing all kinds of okay, so that's the thing that happens. Like an evil monster named Cockatrice is born, and goes into this thing. There's a toad, wicked basilisks, and I'm like, this is a book about a rooster. I definitely need to read this, though. I love deeply weird books, though, so I feel like it's something that I need to read for sure. While I'm staring at this, I also need to finish the Canterbury Tales. I had started reading it in college, and I kind of fell off of it. I don't remember why exactly. I think it's like in college you start things and you start to read things, but you never actually finish them, because you only have like 4 weeks to read an entire novel, entire Tolstoy novel or shit like that, even though it's really good. I just, it's also why I can't understand how people can like read novel-length fiction in a single month and also do that multiple times. Like, where are you guys finding your time? Also, can I have some of that time? But anyway, for sure, I am going to add this to my TBR. I'm also going to re-add Canterbury Tales because that was so good. Oakleaf says it's in the vein of Watership Down and the Tail Chaser's song of like wild adventures about animal heroes. Yeah, I mean, looking at this, it definitely does have like that Watership Down vibe to it. Like 1970s animal book, animal fantasy book. So like, I'd imagine it also have like a dark twist to it, kind of like how the 1970s were very fond of doing. Oakley says, I used to be able to read books so fast and now I cannot. I know, right? Like, even in college, like when I was an English major and had to do this on a weekly basis, I just didn't have the ability to do that. But like growing up as a middle schooler and as a early high schooler, man, I fucking read I devoured novels. And then something happened, I guess. I think it's just, time, really. I've put so many things on my plate, and now it's like trying to figure out how to carve out little snatches away from the computer and away from trying to put words together in order to read. But it's something that I need to do more often, because like these days, it's the best way to turn your brain off. Like, there's so much going on in the world that you just need to step back from social media and building your brand and shit like that, and you just need to sit down in a corner or in your bed with the lamp on, just devouring a book. But, anyway. It's currently 9:30, which means that we should definitely get into our next sprint. Manual says the nefarious executive dysfunction was the one who took my ability to read. That and the screens. But the two are intertwined for me. Yeah, 100%. Like, screens are terrible for neurodivergent. Like, one way or another. Either it's the depression of social media, or, like, the fact that everything on a screen these days is designed to erode your attention span. It's not only designed to erode your attention span, but also designed to grasp all of your attention with an iron grip. So, like, you're sucked in, but you can't stay focused on one thing. You always have to keep on moving to the next thing, but you can't stop moving. And there's some kind of, like, dopamine kick to that as well, because you just keep on moving. And it's terrible. It 100% is terrible. And I would highly recommend, like, even if you, like, do crafts away from your computer, just, like, step away from the fucking computer now and then, you know what I mean? Anyway, is currently 9:32, which means that we should set up for our next sprint. 20 minutes are back on the clock. I have no idea how these next minutes, like, I rubber ducked at you about the Nameless song, but I haven't come to any sort of resolution to getting through this problem. Like, though I will say thank you so much for the encouragement and for saying, you know, this sounds dope. But, I think ultimately what I was saying earlier about just pushing through, slamming out those words, and maybe asking the betas if it looks okay, sounds like a plan, or maybe leaning into the idea that Ismail is going to be a backup antagonist or a background antagonist compared to the entire concept of Mick getting funneled into these trials and Mick dealing with Albert. Because when you get right down to it, Ismail, this isn't the end of the road for Ismail. He's gonna, like, my original plan for him was to actually die during the trials, but I chickened out in the original chapters that I had written for him and that I'm now rewriting. And what wound up happening is he does survive, which means that he becomes a character in later books, replacing a character that I had planned and that was given to me admittedly, but still. And it works a lot better. So I feel like I should stop worrying about whether or not his introduction feels right, maybe. And yeah, that feels right. Like, lean into the idea that it's the trials that are important, not necessarily Ismail's involvement of them, because everything in this book is building up to the other two. Okay, I'm reassured I can do this. And thank you for listening to me rubber duck at you. Anyway, it is 9:34. So if you are plucking along with words, get ready for the next round. If you're not plucking around with words, this is your signal to get back to whatever you're plucking around with. Companion Wolf, you did mention before I went off, bracelet book, although one of the patterns my friend shared with me, and I don't know if it's on the website, still, that is still really cool. Love it. I will check that out at a later time. But also, I wish you the best of luck diving back into it. I wish anybody who's wording right now the best of luck. And on that note, it is 9:35, so here we go with the next sprint. Ready? On your mark. Get set. And go. Okay. That was the next sprint down. Let me switch over to our 15-minute mark. And timer set for 15 minutes. I don't even know why I set this timer. We all know that I go overboard, but let's see. How did you guys do? Where did I start? There it is. Alright. Yeah, talking to you guys was really helpful. 449 words this time around, so that's not bad, but for sure, chatting with you guys helped me break on through, so thank you for indulging me. But that having been said, how did you guys do? Companion Wolff says, accomplished 0, thought about loom knitting. I have loom, but yarn has escaped. Oh no! I hope that you are able to wrangle said yarn and find it. Because loom knitting sounds like a lot of fun right now. I have a knitting project somewhere in one of my boxes that it was originally a scarf for certain people, but I need to unravel it because first off, the stripes don't work, and second off, I'm gonna make it for me. But in any case, there's something soothing about working with yarn in general. I know that loom knitting and actual knitting are, if I'm thinking of loom knitting correctly, it's not quite the same as actual knitting. But it's like, it's very soothing. Like handling the yarn, clicking those needles together, or manipulating your little tools. You kind of like let your brain shut off for a while and let yourself go, and it's very nice. Companion Wolff says, I want to make blanket. Blanket sounds like a good time for the fall and winter, so I highly recommend blanket. You should definitely do blanket. Also, I'm looking at knitting looms right now, and yeah, as I was thinking, it's not like the same as knitting, but it does look like fun. I should not pick up a knitting loom. I need to actually finish a yarn project. Like, I'd start yarn projects, but like starting books, I'd set them aside and leave them to languish for months on end, and then remember they exist, and then do a little bit more, and then let them languish for another few months. So like, I should not start in on anything else until I actually finish the ones I start. But it's supposedly, Companion Wolff says about knitting looms, it's supposedly easier for the motor skills, or for those with poor motor control, that idea. Understandable, yeah, like, these seem like big things, and they work with hooks, which are a lot easier to work with, so I can definitely see that for sure. Man, actually, I should, like, bring out my knitting project and just like do it during these little breaks, because like that's one thing, like if you give yourself something to do during breaks, it kind of like helps give your mind a break, if that makes sense. The entire idea of like taking these breaks is because nobody should be focusing on one task for hours on end. That is how you burn yourself out, and that is especially true with writing. Like, I've done those writing sessions where I'd sit down and I'd write for hours, and then I just wouldn't feel like writing. But if you break things up into smaller chunks and tackle them a little bit at a time, you can give your mind a little bit of a break, and also like give yourself an opportunity to tend to your bodily needs, which is also important for a creative process. That way you can get more done in a shorter amount of time. So that's the entire concept behind the Pomodoro method, which is what we're engaging in right now, where you take long periods of focus time separated by little breaks. Technically 15 minutes is a little bit too long for those little breaks in between those sprints, but you know, it gives me time to catch up with you and to hang out with you. So that's why I'm doing the 15 minutes. Traditionally, though, you should be going for longer sprints and shorter breaks, but hey, whatever. Companion Wolf says, I do have pop holder loom, the plastic one with the little stretchy loops, but it's over across the room. That is sad, getting up and having to grab that, but for sure. Hell yeah, just looms in general just look so much fun. So I fully encourage, like, after sprint or whatever, go get your loom and go work with yarn if you can find yarn, because the other problem that we were talking about is that yarn has escaped. I'm like scrolling through Blue Sky during my break, and apparently Tony Todd died. Like, I don't know if if anybody else outside of the horror realm is familiar, but like that dude was Candyman essentially, which is those are really great movies, especially the first one. If you're not squeamish anyway, go definitely watch at least the first Candyman movie. Don't do it if you are squeamish, because this dude, the Candyman monster, is a dude who kills people with hooks and also happens to have bees in his abdomen, but like, you know, other than that. But yeah, damn. He was such a good actor too. Like, it's always a shame to hear whenever really legit talent up and goes, especially talent that was a part of media that you grew up with, or that you not necessarily grew up with, but like formed a part of your history. It's just weird, and we're not getting at that age. Like, that's how I kind of felt whenever Betty White passed, and whenever Robin Williams passed 10 years ago. 10 years ago, by the way. It is currently 2024. And we've been in a world without Robin Williams for 10 years, not to make things sad. But it's like little by little, the world that you grew up with just kind of breaks off and fades away. And life moves forward, time moves forward as it does, but you start to understand your parents a little bit more, just with the mourning of the slow march of time away from your childhood. You know, the world is changing, and the one that you grew up with no longer exists. I think I spoke a little bit, or implied a little bit about this in last night's session, where I was talking about how I grew up in the before times, as in before the internet really took off and became this ever-present thing in all of society. I grew up in the 90s, and when they say that when you were a kid in the 90s, you were the last generation who went outside and ran around, they kind of really mean it, because like it's hard to put into words how much the world has changed and become more aggressive to people in general, just to funnel them online and into consumers' boxes. And it's always back to the capitalism, I know, but like, you know, you used to have places to go, you don't really anymore, and summers were not as unbearably hot, because if we weren't going through a global climate crisis, people weren't online, they had nothing better to do than to run around outside or to drive around aimlessly. And it was a different world. I'm not saying that was a better world, because there were a lot of facets that were terrible. It was just as violent as now was. It was dirtier and more dangerous in terms of engineering than now is. But, it was different. And culture was different. And it's weird when you step back and you look at the world now and you look at the world you remember if you were born in the 90s. And it's just mind-blowing to realize that you're looking at two completely different societies, completely different worlds. Not to overuse the word world, but that's what it was. And the society you knew is gone. But it was like that for your parents too. And the older that you get, the more you understand, what your parents were talking about whenever they get wax nostalgic about their own childhoods, back in my parents' day, they didn't have... It wasn't just that they didn't have computers, they didn't have television as we did, for example. Radio was different. Radio was the thing back then, that kind of thing. Not 1930s radio, but in the 60s and the 70s, it was more that than television. So it's interesting. The chat says, Oakleaf says, sorry I got distracted about Dante with my dad. Is totally okay. Companion Wolf says, 90s yippee, and yeah, now times is so not hospitable to being outside and not in house as a kid, it sucks. Oakleaf says, oh yeah, absolutely, there are no third places left really. I can barely even go outside in summer now, shaking my head. Yeah, it's terrible. Companion Wolf says, yeah, just different, summer too warm. I was 99, so I feel I kind of was there when the two worlds were blended, and then it got more internet age as time went on. Yeah, basically. I can tell you because I was born in the late 80s, so I remember vividly whenever computers really took off in the mid 90s, but the internet really didn't become a thing until the early 2000s. People had the internet beforehand. The dot-com boom was late 90s, early 2000s, but it was a thing that you went to if you were either A, a nerd, or B, a company trying to be the cutting edge of something. Or C, somebody who's trying to use one of the companies who are doing cutting edge stuff. But it wasn't ubiquitous. It was this growing thing until everybody got online, and that was early 2000s. All of a sudden, every business had to have a website. It wasn't just a cutting edge thing, it was what you had to do. And people found out, there's convenience here. There's Amazon where you can get whatever you need. There's services where you can get your information. There's no need to... you have your early proto-social media hubs with blogs and MySpace, so you have your socializing right there. So it was easier for the outside world to slowly take away those spaces and become more inhospitable. Because you have everything online. Why do you need to go outside? So there were other reasons, of course, too, just this huge push towards corporation, and like literally every space had to be taken up with highways so that you can transport your goods, or they had to be businesses so you can't hang out there anymore unless you're buying something. It's like this entire shift away from the outside being a place that you go and you spend your time at and you took care of, and it was your earth, and so on and so forth. It shifted to the outside is another place of business, essentially. It's every place needs to be like suburbs where you need cars because the car businesses need to make money, or you know, all these places of business, they have to be businesses. You can't, you know, we need to cram in as much store space as possible, so we can't have any spots that are just for hanging out and stuff like that. Companion Wolf says, frustrating for me that we have shifted as a disabled person. On one hand, it is so helpful to be shopping and not talking online because can't go out into physical spaces, but then the corporations, etc. Yeah, being advertised to 24/7 by corporations might not be fun, but also like it also sucks because you literally, if you're like admitted, like spaces are inhospitable to the disabled no matter which way you cut it. They're either overwhelming, so you're fucked if you're neurodivergent, or they're not designed for people with mobility issues, and I could go on, but yeah, it really does suck to be disabled in this day and age. Oakley says, what's appalling are the places with no crossing walking signs. If you don't have a car, you can't go places. You can't safely cross streets. Agreed. And also, all of the places that don't fucking have sidewalks, period. Like, there are so... You go out into the suburbs, there are no sidewalks. Like, how... There's no space for you if you're not driving. Like, there's no space for bikes, there's no space for walking, there's nothing. Bikes can kind of sort of share the road, so they get by, but like, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't travel. If you're walking on foot because you can't have a car and you're poor, you can't travel. It sucks. And luckily, I live in very close to a major city, so that's not super duper a problem. I really wish my neighbors would stop using the sidewalks as a dog toilet, though. Like, if your dog needs to go, fine, but like fucking pick it up afterwards, please. Like, be courteous, you know what I mean? But anyway, beyond that, like, for the most part, it's decent, but for some reason the suburbs are allergic to walk signs. So I'm with you there. It's still not as accessible as it could possibly be, and it's definitely not as accessible as New York City itself. Like, that is one thing that I do miss about Queens, like living in Queens and living within the 5 boroughs, except for Staten, because Staten doesn't have this. But for the most part, like in the other 4 boroughs, everything has sidewalks, everything has walk signs, everything, or if they don't have walk signs, there are street signs that people actually adhere to. It's fine. You know, it's safe to walk. But like Staten Island or the suburbs, you are shit out of luck. Go fuck yourself. Companion Wolf says, crossing streets my enemy. Yeah. So, that's the crux of it, really. Like, in some ways, the world has gotten more convenient, but in other ways, there's a lot that needs to be done. I know I said that the before times were not perfect, and they weren't. The before times were openly ableist, they were openly homophobic, They were openly against, just as against people who were poor. There were less regulations because we haven't gone through the fires that would result in regulations yet. Well, not in some respects, there were less regulations because we didn't know we needed the regulations, but in other respects, it was also more regulated depending on what you were talking about because the current government, like the past 20 years of government, have been working to repeal regulations one by one. But, you know, in that respect, you know, it was just as dangerous a world back then as it was now. It's just that you had more places to go and a little bit, ironically, more freedom. Benny Wolf says, Suburbia, also my enemy, lives there. Yeah, I grew up in suburbia, and I don't entirely miss it. I like the ability to go where I need to without car as much as possible. I hate driving. Driving makes me super duper anxious. I can drive, despite what most people think, apparently. I just don't want to be in control of a several ton vehicle, you know what I mean? So like I avoid it as much as possible and take public transportation whenever possible and walk whenever not possible, or take an Uber if I have the money for it, which is very rare. But you can't do that in the suburbs and in certain cities that are not major population centers in the eastern seaboard. It's just not possible. So it kind of sucks. Yeah. Oh, Oakleaf says, FYI, the music is drowning you out a little bit, at least for me. That's also good to know. I actually pumped up the volume because I had been listening to earlier streams. So I kind of want a balance where you can hear the music, but you can also hear my voice. So I just adjusted it downward. Let me know if it's a little bit better. Because like listening to past streams, the stream recordings, on my channel at least, I'm like, I can only hear a backbeat and then my voice, and it's kind of sucks. But I don't know. Hopefully that's a little bit better. But tell me what you think. Oakleaf says, going outside, my enemy, which sucks because I used to love outside. Companion, yeah, same here. Despite the fact that when I was a kid, I was irrationally afraid of ticks because I think we were just learning that Lyme disease was a thing, which is also fucking crazy. Like, if you think about it, like, back in the 90s, we didn't know, like, Lyme disease was a new thing, and now you basically have all heard about it. And I guess you kind of get the same feeling with COVID, because there was a time, you know, you can remember before times of COVID, right? Like, there's that, but imagine that for Lyme disease. Granted, I was like a real little kid when they first started finding cases of Lyme disease. Actually, I should not say that. I should, Lyme disease, I do believe they were starting to really understand in the 80s, but like in the 90s, you were starting to get pamphlets about it. And I lived in a county where there was a massive deer population because obviously there are no wolves in the state of Pennsylvania. So there are no apex predators to take care of deer. And when you're in the suburbs, you can't hunt the deer. Like, you have to be in very specific areas in order to hunt deer. So the deer population was crazy, which meant tick populations were crazy. Though I have never actually encountered a tick despite rolling around outside, but it was like something that I was terrified of. Um, Daniel says, you are valid. I don't like suburbs because I can't walk to store. It's too far. I need to live elsewhere. Oakleaf, driving anxiety handshake. Hell yeah, driving anxiety handshake. Oakleaf says, bro, I have chronic Lyme from childhood. You are right to be terrified of ticks. LOL, LOL sob. Yeah, like, I am so sorry because I've heard so much about Lyme disease growing up, and it sounds fucking terrifying. Like, sure, you don't necessarily die, but the idea that, you know, the way that they described it, it sounded like you're in constant pain and stuff like that, and it's not something that I can personally, that I would want to wish on anybody, and which is to say I'm just like so sorry about that. Manuel says, bold too, so I have memories. This is half a joke, but yeah, beginning of COVID versus now is very strange to think about, isn't it? Like, I know that in some respects, in some areas, people have just gone and pretended like nothing has ever happened. Like, you don't see masks anymore, and at least in certain parts of New York, you can't wear masks, which is dumb. They keep on going back and forth about masks on the subway. People, you can, contrary to popular belief, you can wear a mask on the subway. That law has not yet passed, but people don't. And it's like same as always for the most part. But at the same time, there's still that understanding that something happened. You see it with everything. You see it in grocery prices. You see it in politics. You see it everywhere. So even if people aren't masking up like they should be, there's still that sense that there was a before time. Companion Wolf says, I bought a respiratory thing, the fancy kind, because I read it's safest, but a bit clunky. However, I haven't used it much because I don't go out very much at all. Understandable. To be honest, I will say this. At most, you just need an N95 mask, and those are very lightweight. But if you can't have those, even just like a little paper mask, 2 paper masks ideally, but like it's the age-old advice, because not everybody can get a supply of the fancy masks. All you really need is like a mask, you know? But I can understand kind of like not going out too. Not everybody can, and that's the thing. Especially if you have any sort of disability, like the risk is just depending on where you are, you know? Oakleaf says, before COVID feels like another reality to me. Everything in my life is different, and watching people pretend it isn't is so jarring. I know, right? Like, it really is jarring. Like, sometimes I go back and I look at pictures because I used to do a lot of events before COVID. Not like, I didn't like party, but like, I would go to gaming events and stuff like that. And I remember looking at pictures, and you know how like I go to a monthly Ingress meetup. I looked at pictures in of those specifically, and like a month before we understood that COVID was a thing, we were right there in Rockefeller Center tons of people surrounding us and tons of people at this event. And in a way, like, you can go to Rockefeller Center, it's still just as crowded as ever, but it doesn't feel the same, you know? I'm looking at this picture, I'm seeing people who have not a care in the world because they have no reason to have a care in the world. Things are going a-okay. And I go to these events now, and I have this sense, you know, job security hasn't been a thing since COVID for reasons. Personal safety isn't much of a thing. It's like, it's an entirely different vibe. Manuel says, I like the N95s. They're not terrible. A little itchy, but that's not horrible. Yeah, I mean, if you're not used to wearing a mask, wearing the N95s especially might be a little bit of adjustment. You just have to, like, keep on wearing it in order to get used to it. Currently, I kind of got a little bit bougie. I have cloth masks, personally, though I'll also wear paper masks here and there, but, well, usually because I'm also a cheap bastard. But at the height of the pandemic, I would only wear N95s, and those were just, at first they were weird, but once I got used to them, they were so comfortable, and they felt so safe. But yeah. So if you're worried about like COVID, I would recommend that. Like, just like, you only had to wear one mask. You didn't have to layer up or anything like that. And the N95s just kind of like fit. Mine kind of like, I don't know if it's different for all of them, but mine looped over my ears and kind of like fit a little bit snugly to my face. In ways that paper masks don't, because you know how paper masks you have to actually physically mold to your nose and stuff like that, and even then it kind of feels a little bit too loose. You didn't have that with the N95 mask, so it felt a little bit better. But in any case, yeah, it feels weird to, uh, it does feel weird at first for an N95, but it's the one that I would recommend personally. But anyway, Daniel Wolf says cloth masks is good. I have a few, as you should. I know that they recommend that you replace cloth masks every so often, but I kind of don't. It's probably not great, but you know, it's just so much easier. You wash it and you put it back on your face, and you're good to go. It's great. So, anyway, it is currently 10:28, which means that we should be gearing up for our very last sprint of the night. Which is probably a good thing before we get too much of a downer about the before times of COVID and all kinds of COVID shenanigans. But anyway, if you're writing, make sure that you're on your docs. If you're not writing, gear up for whatever you're doing. And I wish you the best of luck on this very last sprint. Clicks those fingers, again, those last words. Oakley says, I might actually write in this one. I am behind you 100%. I hope you do. So that, you know, I'm rooting for you. Any sort of progress. Let's go. Anyway, it is 10:30. So best of luck, everybody. Get ready. Get set. And here we go. All right. That is the end of the very last sprint of the night. How did you do? For me, I'm going to count all that because I edited some of it. 208 words for a grand total of, let's see. Here it is. 783 words today, which isn't bad. You know, it is progress. So there is that. It's not bad. Over the weekend, I am going to be out in the city. But as you know, I always take my notebook whenever I go out into the city. And usually what happens is if I'm not going to hang out with friends, as tomorrow I will not be, I'm going out to finish an Ingress banner so that on Sunday, whenever I go and attend a meetup with friends and one of the developers of one of the Niantic developers, so it's super exciting. My banner will be all done so I can start a new one, and this is important if you know how Ingress works. If you don't know how Ingress works, basically a banner is the prize for a mission. There are things in Ingress called missions, and what missions are basically like little quests. And if you don't even know what Ingress is, it's a walking game, essentially Pokemon Go's older sci-fi sibling. But it works a little bit different. I guess if you play Pogo, literally what an Ingress mission is a Pokemon Go route. So you have a set path that you need to walk, and you have to hit up certain for a Pogo, the route works like you have a start point and you have an end point, and you have to follow that route exactly in order to get to from one end to the other and have that route counted. In Ingress, however, you also have a path, but it doesn't track where exactly on that path you are. You don't have to follow it exactly. What you do instead is it's a chain of different little, think of Pokemon stops or Pokemon gyms that you have to interact with. In ours, it's called portals. So you have a series of portals that you have to interact with, and they're usually arranged in a line because you're being funneled around a specific area. Usually the mission maker wants you to check out certain surroundings that might be interesting. So you go to each little portal, or a Pokestop, you interact with it, then you move on to the next one. And once you interact with a certain number of them, usually about 6, then you receive a little badge in your profile. A banner is whenever you have a series of these badges, and what people like to do is make images with these badges. So you might have 18 badges in a 6x3 square, and together they form an image. I am currently in the middle of one banner, and it is the holy grail for my New York experience. It's this beautiful little banner that is laid out across the entirety of the Upper West Side, and it's called Away From Home. But it is 66 missions long, and the missions aren't bad, but it's notoriously tedious, especially, and a couple of missions at the very end apparently have really wonky portals because whoever did it was like fucking drunk, I guess. But I know the dude who did it too, and that would check out. I'm not even gonna lie. But I want to finish that up because when you're doing banners, you just don't do like half a banner and then another entirely different banner and then the rest of the banner. You have to kind of like do the entire thing, in my opinion. Otherwise, you have to restart, and I don't want to restart, you know? So, Oakleaf says 356, not too shabby. Not too shabby indeed. That is definitely a good start. And I know that you were kind of like poking along. You weren't exactly into it, so I'm really proud of you for getting into it, at least this little bit, so that you might be able to use the rest of it, or use that as a jumping off point for maybe tomorrow's, so that you can go on a little bit further. Companion Wolf says, I did not accomplish, but I tried looking at things to help me accomplish ways to circumvent executive dysfunction. That's fair, yeah. So, like, some nights you just can't do it, and I totally understand. I'm kind of feeling that way too, to be honest. Sometimes I can push through. Like tonight, I was able to push through, but some nights it's sort of like, nope, nope. There is a word now, and now I go and take break. Luckily, it was not one of those nights for me, but I think after this, I'm going to log off, take a shower. Normally, I hang out with my Final Fantasy FC because they are lovely people, and I always say hello and howdy for the night, especially since it's a Friday night. But like right now, I kind of just want to vegetate, to be honest, and gear up for the shenanigans that it's going to be a lot of walking tomorrow and the day after. So we'll see what happens. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that about me. The point is, like, it is totally okay if you didn't accomplish anything. If you just don't have brain meat today, it's understandable you don't have brain meat. You can't really force yourself with that. Oakleaf says that game sounds really cool. It is really cool, in my opinion. I've been playing it since 2015, I want to say. It was the year after it was made available for the iOS, and I started on iOS. But it's a little bit difficult to get into. First off, because it has all the problems with Pogo, except there's less to do, because Pogo at least has Pokemon pop-up that you can, let's say you don't feel like going outside. If you open up Pogo, it doesn't matter. You always have like a Pokemon to catch or a Team Rocket balloon to tap on and fight. But in Ingress, it forces you to go outside because the only thing that you can do remotely is mess with your drone. Drone is a little icon that you can send off to portals that aren't around you so that you can interact with them, but you can only do that once an hour. Otherwise, it makes you go out and walk and interact with portals. And if you're in a suburban area or a rural area, it's harder. But if you're in an urban area or a suburban area that's close to like an urban setting, it's a little bit more fun. You also are more likely to have events happening because you're community is probably healthier and more vibrant and stronger. So the one in New York City is not as dead as people would think. You just have to like know where to find it. Especially since it's an old game, so a lot of players had fallen out. It was already kind of like on the downswing before the pandemic, but now it's a lot quieter. But there are groups. Like I'm in the first Saturday group for New York. So every first Saturday I go off and I hang out with them. We do things together. But also second Sunday is its own event. Normally, that's just an event where you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to do a banner, or even just like 6 missions, and you'll get an achievement for it, or build up towards an achievement for it. But this second Sunday, just for reasons I don't completely understand, one of the developers for Niantic is going to be hanging out with us, so cool. I'm really excited about that. But overall, yeah, 100%, you have to find your community. But if you find your community, you get access to those events. There's also the biggest events in Ingress are called anomalies, which is where you and your team, there are 2 teams in Ingress. One's called the Enlightened, which I'm a part of, and the other one is called Resistance. And I will get into the story about the differences between these if you want me to, but basically, anomalies are large citywide, or not really citywide, but like massive battles between these 2 factions. And the aim is that you work together with hundreds of other people, forming dozens of teams in order to claim control over that town's portals. Also, to win battles, there's such a thing as battle beacons. What those are basically like Pokemon gyms, but in a sci-fi twist and with only 2 factions. It's very chaotic. So like the anomalies are the center part, or the crown jewel of every Ingress calendar, event calendar. But there are multiple other events. But ultimately, like Ingress is all about going outside and experiencing your local area. So you do that on your own, by doing missions whenever you feel like it, or just like going and interacting with portals, or you do it socially through events. Ingress is very much like it very much encourages event participation. Companion Wolf says, Ingress, I always wanted to get into it, but it seems like a very outside game. It is, yeah, basically what I was saying, it is very much an outside game. Like I said, it's not like Pogo, where if you open up the app, like Pogo is technically supposed to be an outside game, but you open up the app and you can interact with things come to you. Ingress, you have to go to the thing. There is no not going to the thing. Oakleaf says, running this and talking for hours is a lot of energy. You deserve rest and vegetating. Oh, thank you. But also, just like, yeah, Friday nights in general are my vegetating nights. It's usually the end of the work week. And also, I'm going to just advertise another stream here. There is another stream on YouTube. I highly recommend it. It's by a channel called Dave's Archives. And what they do, what Dave does, his normal thing is making compilations of commercials from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So every Friday night, he runs a live stream where he hangs out with people. And it's just sort of like, it's kind of like this where he talks for hours on end, but you see his face, and in the corner of the screen, you see him playing his videos. So he'll like do commentaries, so you'll get to watch it with him. He'll fast forward and replay bits, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of dirty humor, though. Like, it's But it's fun to sleep to. Like, it's very soothing. He's got a very soothing voice, even when he's doing really bad Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions or talking about innuendos and stuff like that. So, like, I'm definitely going to be like, shower, then curl up in bed with book and Dave's Archives playing, and that's going to be like my night. It's a good thing to vegetate to, for sure. So if you are still in the mood for streams after this one, just go to Dave's Archives. Just trust me there. Companionable says, resistance, smiley face, that was my faction, or whatever you called the two. Faction is the correct word, and resistance are cool peeps. Admittedly, my ex was resistance. It was kind of our thing to like go back and forth and kind of like help each other out, not in terms of intel, because yes, intel is a thing in this game. It is a pretend war essentially, but also in terms of like leveling up, because who better to help you level up than a member playing the enemy faction? But beyond the X, like, there are a lot of cool resistance peeps out there. Y'all are chill. The Enlightened, at least my local Enlightened, are full of drama queens. I'm still here because there are some good peeps, but overall it is just so fucking exhausting. Except for, like, the Brooklyn Enlightened and the New Jersey Enlightened. They're cool peeps. But Jesus Christ, the Westchester Enlightened and some parts of the New York Enlightened, they are fucking, like, please no. But in a serious part, the Enlightened is if you're there for tea. Not really. Better description of the Enlightened versus the Resistance is basically the entire game of Ingress is centered around a story in which an organization that's very much like CERN had discovered these portals which give off this energy. And the energy has the potential to drive forward humankind. And within these portals, control is sort of like not really controlling this energy, but like trying to guide humanity in how to use it, are these extra-dimensional beings called Shapers. So the factions are basically the Resistance, who believe that the Shapers should not be trusted, and that the energy given off by the portals needs to be contained and protected. They are essentially the SCP foundation of this universe. On the other hand, you have the Enlightened, who believe that the energy is the key to unlocking the next stage of human evolution, and therefore believe that the Shapers are meant to be shepherds in order to guide us to something greater than ourselves. So we're a cult. Like, I don't even mean that jokingly. The Enlightened, as the story progresses, our leader is originally this man called Roland Jarvis. He dies, but then is absorbed into the portal matrix and is replaced by a woman called the Acolyte, who basically reveres Shapers and shaping technology and the energy and portals in a religious fervor. At this point, like, I kind of stopped following the story because it really doesn't matter. You don't need to know the story in order to play the game. Nobody knows the story in order to play the game. It's so convoluted. It's not even, like, nobody takes it seriously anyway. Like, the anomalies represent major plot points, but nobody actually pays attention to them except for LOL, smack the portal, and pretty light tap in for blue side, green side. But basically, if I recall correctly, the Acolyte managed to resurrect Jarvis in a different body, and this is called recursion. There's an Ingress anime. If you watch it, it's about recursion. So it will give you a little bit more of a straightforward insight. It's on Netflix, and that's about the only positive thing I can say about it. It's like, the lore is a fucking mess with Ingress, but long story short, yes, the leader of the Enlightened is basically sci-fi Jesus, with occasional appearances by definitely not cult leader. So the Enlightened is a cult, and the Resistance is the Resistance, meanwhile, is led by an fucking AI called Ada, who might occasionally side with the Enlightened, but it does not side with Roland Jarvis and the Acolyte. Long story. But yeah, the Resistance is the SAP Foundation as led by an AI, and the Enlightened are a UFO cult led by Sci-Fi Jesus. So there you go. That is the Cliff Notes summary, as best as I can, of Ingress lore, and you do not need to know any of this, and I do not recommend actually getting into any of it. Although I will say this, if you do get into lore, some of the characters are fucking hilarious, and at the very least, follow the lore for the characters. Like, P.A. Chapeau is like this hacker who thinks he's like smooth as anything, but he's actually just a complete fucking dork. Anytime he appears at an anomaly, it's amazing. Hank Green, he in the lore he's described as like an action hero, and in the anime he's an action hero, but he's also like in like the shorts. If you ever like open up media that you might get from portals, or if you go on to Ingress's YouTube channel and look at the shorts, he's like this utter goofball. Like, there's an entire short where he meets his double from another universe, and all they're doing is talking about cilantro and how they both have the soap gene. And it's the funniest fucking thing, because it's like in the middle of a sci-fi war, you have these two dipshits who are talking about fucking cilantro. Jax Wolff says, I tried to get in, I think I already read that. I tried to get into it before I realized it was not super accessible. Yeah, that's the problem. It's not. It's a walking game, and basically there are disabled people and people with limited mobility who play it, but you have an easier time in cities. The people that I know of who are disabled or of limited mobility and who live in the suburbs are what we call cargressers, which means that those are the players who play primarily or exclusively from the cars. So not Hank Green, I'm sorry, it's not. I am so sorry. His name is Hank Johnson, not Hank Green. But he acts like Hank Green, so there's that. Like, this dude is a fucking nerd. Like I said, there's an entire video about in which he and his double from another universe, they're only talking about cilantro while they're on a covert mission. It's like, this dude is a fucking dork, and it's amazing. But getting back into it, yeah, basically your options if you're disabled with Ingress are, unfortunately, play in an urban center, play from your car, or don't play. And I know that sounds awful, but that's the biggest downside. And that is the biggest drawback with Pogo as well, though Pogo is a little bit more accessible because, like I said, stuff comes to you. But all of that is really by design. Ingress was basically designed to be an active game, much like Run Zombie Run and things like that. So I think like they weren't really thinking too much about accessibility, and I feel like in its infancy it makes sense, unfortunately. But once it became a thing, then it's like harder to justify. And for certain, Pogo should not ever be that inaccessible. Like, I fully support the idea that it has things come to you. Jax Wolff says, I should get into the Ingress story. I like the kind of alluded. I can fix the lore. I have the technology. Good luck with fanfiction. I've been following the lore for a while, and even I can't make heads or tails of most of it. Jumping to that next question, is there a wiki or like archive of Ingress stuff? There is a wiki. I don't know if it's like there's a fandom wiki for it for sure, and there are definite resources all over the place. If you go into Reddit, there might be Reddit threads for the story thus far and stuff like that. But first and foremost, you would probably want to go on the fandom wiki for Ingress. That's where all the lore is kind of sort of explained. And I say kind of sort of because still good fucking luck. I am so sorry that it's going to have to be like that. But you are basically talking about 10 years of a lot of back and forth, a lot of choose your own adventure style and tabletop RPG style, shifting lore and stuff like that. So it's a little bit dense and hard to follow, but I believe you. Oakley says Ada Lovelace. Yes, all caps though. But I do believe that is actually who she's named after. Hank Green is a character. Answer that. It's actually Hank Johnson. My bad. I would fully believe in Hank Green about talking about cilantro. Exactly. Like, this man is basically Hank Green, but like he's actually named Hank Johnson, and he's like a 40-year-old dude. And it's actually kind of funny, like anything about Hank Johnson. Like, for one anomaly, one of the goals was that the factions had to find the actual, they had an actor come in play Hank Johnson, and you were supposed to find him and protect him. And the Resistance found him, and what they did in order to protect him was put him on a bus. And just had him go around the city on a fucking party bus with them. And it's like, those are the kind of tactics that you see in an anomaly. It's like the kind of shenanigans. Like, and the best part about it is the Resistance has a habit of renting out party buses, at least in this country, like at anomalies. It's happened at least 3 times where the Resistance just have a party bus with pizza on it. And meanwhile, the rest of us are like, we have to go and capture these on foot. And the Enlightened get mad, but it's sort of like, well, we could have a party bus too. It's just like, yeah, it's mostly happened. It only happened in Chicago once, but mostly like on the coasts. The Resistance understand that, both factions actually understand that the country falls in a certain way when it comes to anomalies, and this is kind of notorious. The coasts always go to the Enlightened. So if there's an anomaly on a coast of the United States, you know that the Enlightened is winning. If it's in the middle of the country, the Resistance are winning. So they've only done a party bus in the middle of the country once, and it was for funsies and they happened to have Hank Green do it, boarded, and just party with them. All the other times, the Resistance would like rent out party buses on a coastal city. Like the last time there was a New York anomaly, there was a fucking party bus with pizza just traveling around Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And it's because they just didn't care. Like, they were going to lose anyway. Why not make it fun and not be out in the heat walking around? You know what I mean? So they do that. Another thing that is very traditional is if a faction knows that they're just going to get floor stomped, 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to end up in a fucking bar. Like, there was an anomaly closer to the Canadian border, and for some reason Canada can go either way. But the Resistance were getting stopped, so they were like, well, we quit halfway through the anomaly and we're all going to go to get drinks. So there's that. The Enlightened did, some parts of the Enlightened did that in the last New York anomaly because apparently the New York team didn't fully test the play box, aka the area where the anomaly is being held, and there were dead spots, so a lot of players couldn't play. So like, I remember being in the New York anomaly the last time I was here, and half my team just go into a bar and get wasted off of tequila shots because they were all like, well, we have no signal. So there are things like that going on. Party bus, there's that. Out in Japan, it gets like there are Ingress events all over the world. Just as a little continuation of the pattern, Europe is usually Resistance. Asia can go either way, but Japan tends to be Enlightened. So in Japan, things get crazier, and they're really big on Ingress in Japan. That's why you wound up with Pogo, because like people who are key to Pokemon were avid Ingress players, and they were like, hey, we want to bring this kind of vibe to Pokemon. So it has a huge presence over in Japan, and there would be stories of people who are fucking loaded just literally renting out trains and having party trains in Japan for Ingress anomalies. So you get shenanigans like that. It's kind of like fun, the wild stories that happen. So it's community, but it's also like you have battle stories, and it's great. I fully recommend it, but you 100%, like, it's not a fully accessible game, and you have to find your community if you want to play. Companion Wolf says, okay, but I can do Zombies Run because I allow stationary bike and sometimes walk around neighborhood. Oh, okay. I did not know about Zombies Run. Wish I knew about that when I had a stationary bike, to be honest with you. Love Zombies Run, trying to start again. I encourage that 100%. Hope you get back into it. Congrats, Resistance, you are now in party time. They were. That's why I say, like, Resistance knows how to have a good time. Like, you have some Resistance who take the game way too seriously, but for the most part, like, even the Resistance finds those people annoying. For the most part, like, a lot of Resistance players are super chill, and it's like, if they do show rivalry with the Enlightened, it's like friendly rivalry. But other than that, like, outside of Europe, where for some reason they fucking go hardcore, do not fuck around with the Resistance in Europe. Jesus Christ, they are intense. If the American Resistance, at least, they're very laid back and they don't take the game super seriously. Like, it's all fun games and party buses with pizza. Oakley says the Resistance putting a man on a bus. You're being rescued. Please do not resist. That was basically it. Companion Wolf says Japan going extra is very in brand. LOL. Yeah, for on brand. Yeah, LOL. Yeah, pretty much. There's some crazy shit that goes down in Japan, man. Like, I would love to sample a little bit, but I would not want to live there / visit there full time. For a number of reasons, ranging from price to xenophobia. But anyway, like, I've heard stories, not just in Ingress, but in general. It's a very interesting country, and I am very fascinated by the things that happen there. I mean, any country that gives us, like, cat cavities, there are a pack of geniuses over there, and I kind of want to see what else they do. Oakleaf says 100%. Yep. So yeah, that is, Ingress and all the fun shenanigans. So basically the plan is for this weekend. Tomorrow I am going out and finishing the banner, but I'm also going to be like taking my notebook, and hopefully I'll be able to push through to at least the end of this scene. Maybe the end of 14, who knows? We'll see what happens. But whatever happens. Then Sunday, it's going to be hanging out basically all day. I'm going to start the day early afternoon. I'm going to meet that my friends and that developer. We're going to have our little walk around for second Sunday. It's going to be a great time. And then most likely it's just going to be, usually what happens is we end up chilling out. Holiday markets are also open in New York. I mentioned this last night, but I will continue to describe them. Basically, the holiday markets in New York City are 3 very massive pop-up markets. There's one in Columbus Circle near Central Park, another one in Bryant Park, which is near Grand Central. Between Grand Central and Times Square, really. And the third is in Union Square, which is my favorite place, but it is a park in the lower teens of Manhattan, right near a 3-story Barnes & Noble. I will likely be closest to the one near Columbus Circle tomorrow. I didn't get a chance last week to check it out, but it's my holiday tradition to visit at least one of them, and to go and get hot cocoa at the best hot cocoa I have ever had, which is always at the Max Brenner stall. Max Brenner is a famous chocolatier and chocolate shop in New York City, and every year they have multiple stalls with at least one in every market, 2 in the Bryant Park location that I know of. And they have homemade hot chocolate with homemade marshmallows. So, like, you go in and you get a little cup of hot cocoa that's thick and very chocolatey, and you have the option of topping it with a brick of marshmallow, and it is very indulgent, and it will wreak havoc on your stomach if your stomach is sensitive to dairy and the finer things in life, as mine is. But it is so worth it. It's so worth it to suffer. It is such a beautiful little hot chocolate. I highly recommend it. The rest of the market is they usually have like food there. They have really nice apple cider. There's a farm that comes in that does apple cider donuts and apple cider. They always have a stall, but I can't remember what they're called, and it's always good. Look for the sign for apple cider donuts, gingerbread man, and apple cider. But they all don't just have food, they also have gifts, and it's always like artsy gifts. Like you'll have artists do all these pop-up stalls that sell everything from like clothing to soaps to journals, leather goods, anything that you can imagine. And it's a lot of fun. I usually don't get anything but hot chocolate and food, because it is very expensive. All those stalls are extremely expensive, but it's very nice to look at. And just like window shop and wish you had $50 to spend on a journal with real leather and handmade paper pages and stuff like that. So it'll be nice to like go there and chill out. And I think this might be the first year that I'm going. Like I usually go on my own either way, but when I first learned about it, it was with a bunch of friends I stopped talking to for fun reasons. Then I went the year after with a bunch of friends I stopped talking to for other fun reasons. And then the years after that, I'd be going there and kind of like low-key shopping around because I was with my ex. So this is the first year that I'm just kind of like going for myself. And I'm kind of looking forward to it, because like it's a nice time and maybe I will like sacrifice a little bit of money for me because I've been trying to be good, trying to pay down that debt and, treat myself, but we'll see. But yeah, the plan, like I keep saying, like, the plan is hang out tomorrow, walk around, maybe check out the markets, do some writing, do a banner. Sunday, more of the same, go out, hang out with peeps, do a banner, maybe check out the market if I hadn't yet and we break our ranks. And then during the week, Monday and Wednesday are raid nights, so as always, no stream. Tuesday is D&D night, so no stream, most likely. Fingers crossed that D&D happens. You know how D&D can sometimes be ephemeral or whatnot. I definitely mispronounced that. Ephemeral, there we go. So the next time we will have a streaming session, will be Thursday. It's going to be the same time, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, immediately after Weeknight Riders if you're on Blue Sky. Then it'll be followed by Friday's session, Friday night to 8 p.m. to whenever. If you can come, A-okay. If you can't, totally A-okay too. These are all chill sessions. Drop by whenever you have a chance, or, you do you, essentially, because these are meant to be chill and whatnot. One last question though, but how is the sound? Because I did adjust it down, and I really hope that I hit the sweet spot where you can hear the music but also hear my voice. I guess I'll figure out whenever I listen to the playback. Like I said, I've been listening to the playback to take notes and make adjustments to your experience, but we're still in the learning phase and whatnot. But that all said, though, I want to. Daniel says, "Little cheat, little treat." Yeah. Daniel says, "Music may be tiny bit too loud." Lean Cat, hello. I didn't even realize that you were here. Sounds great. I'm so sorry to catch you literally at the tail end. Companion Wolf, I will try to listen to the playback and see how far down I need to adjust it. I do apologize if it's still a little bit too loud. I will eventually figure it out. Like, these past streams, it was way too soft, so that's, why I'm struggling with it, but we'll figure it out, so hopefully, I'm taking a note right now, like, 26.6 decibels is too loud. Okay. Well, I'm not going to fiddle too much because we're at the tail end anyway, but I will definitely keep it in mind, listen to the playback with that in mind, and try to figure it out. Leocat, I dropped in around the Ingress ranting, lol. Oh, gotcha. Um, yeah, you didn't miss much. We talked about Ingress. We did 3 sprints today, and in the middle of each, we talked about everything from crap. All the fun bits about the Nameless song were during the break with the loud music. So that'll be fun to listen to on playback. And I do apologize, but also it was full of spoilers, so maybe we didn't really lose too much there. At least agents won't be angry at me for spoiling some bits. Um, but we also talked about before times before COVID, before Lyme disease, weirdly enough, and also like before the internet again. We talked about Ingress a lot because this weekend is going to be full of Ingress for me. And it's going to be fun. And Ingress is a hilarious game to talk about and try to describe to people because it is absolutely insane, and so is the lore. Um, but yeah, that was what we covered tonight. Those were the tangents. You know how it is with tangents. But anyway, Jesus Christ, I might have gone off for like a half an hour in addition. So I'm so glad that you guys put up with my ranting. It's always a pleasure to sit here for hours on end and just to talk to you about interests and fun stuff, little known facts, uh, waxing nostalgia about shit and stuff like that. But, oh, hilariously, we just hit the end of that lo-fi video. So, I guess that's even more of an incentive to start wrapping things up. But, Leoncat says, if you go to the Union Square Market, wave at my alma mater for me, or flip it off, whichever. Oh, oh, New School's down that way, huh? Hilariously, Union Square is my favorite market. So, but unfortunately, I will probably be up for more towards the upper west side, which means if I do end up dropping by a holiday market, it will probably be Columbus Squares. But I will keep that in mind. I'm making a point to go to the Union Square Market at least once a year anyway. Um, and more and more frequently lately, whenever I go into the city, I somehow end up in Union Square. I don't even know how. Like, it used to be that I'd end up like more in Bryant Park and stuff like that, but no, apparently I walk all the way to Union Square now. But I will definitely find your alma mater and flip it off for you. It's waving hello if you're from New Jersey. I'm not from New Jersey, but I'm resident here, so close enough. Companion Wolf says, I love to hear the words. Aw, love you too. And Oakleaf says, perfect timing, lol. I know, right? I'm also terrified because these are like 4-hour long videos and we keep on getting to the end of them. So, on that note, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you as always to everybody who dropped in and hung out with me this Friday night. Just having you hang out with me means a lot. It not only feels like this is worth doing, but like it's like a sense of camaraderie that I'm not really used to with Ryan communities, and I am very much welcome. I am loving these. Oakleaf says, and on that note, I gotta head out to bed. Thanks for hosting. This was a nice company to hang out with. And thank you also. I very much agree. It is very nice company on these Thursday and Friday nights. Um, but yeah, just to reiterate, next session won't happen until next Thursday. So I hope to see y'all there. But until then, I hope y'all have a great weekend and a great week. I hope, you know, whatever happens, keep your head up, hang in there, um, and make art. Embrace art, find each other, and just know that the world is full of beautiful things. And yeah, thank you so much again. I love y'all, and I hope to see you Thursday. Good night, and take care. Love ya.